Hey guys, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite albums, and it's times like this that I feel like I'm searching for meaning in my life, and you know what? It's the perfect time to do a review on the album that is Sun Kill Moon's Benji. So Sun Kill Moon is a singer, songwriter, and guitarist, and his real name is actually Mark Kozalek, and I have actually covered three of his albums in the past. I know it's kind of crazy, but I actually did. I talked about his album Common as Light and Love as Red Valleys of Blood, I think is the title of the album, in the year 2017. And then last year I covered Mark Kozalek's self-titled, and then earlier on this year I talked about his newest album, I Also Want to Die in New Orleans, actually New Orleans. But now I'm actually gonna talk about his best album, Benji, in a full-length album review because I just love it a lot. His music is some of the most unique music I've heard this decade because while it is folk music, it's folk rock, it's not much musical but more wordy, very detailed, and his songs are very narrative heavy. Usually he talks about a topic or a story in each song, or maybe multiple topics and stories, and he basically talks about his thoughts and his experience, and he just rambles on and on and on. And the music on this album is, in my opinion, the most refined from all the Sun Kill Moon albums. They're the most beautiful, the most gorgeous. They're very low key, but also very depressing, to be honest, and very painful and bittersweet as well. But even though this album is very depressing, in my opinion, because basically every single track on the album is about death, mortality, and the meaning of life, the music and the tone of the album isn't necessarily dark or violent or scary. In fact, it's very tender and very soft, and it just shows us that, hey, this is reality. This is what happens in real life. And I really like the personality and the character of this album. The album starts off with Carissa, the first track, and right off the bat, I think Carissa is one of the better songs of the decade because it's just so beautiful. It's about the sudden death of Mark's second cousin, and even though he doesn't know his second cousin all that well, he still wanted to write a song about her. And it's very beautiful, but also very depressing and sad, of course. The guitars are very, very dreary on this album, and not dreary in that it's very dramatic or epic or anything. It's actually very slow and very calming. In a way, it really puts you in this very depressing mood, and it's powerful enough to move you to tears. It's really powerful, especially at the 3:12 minute mark, and also several other occasions on the track where we get this very beautiful, bittersweet, twittery guitar lick, which I think is just spectacular, and it hits you in the heart. And also, in the song, Mark talks about how he wishes that, more like he wants to find out if there is more value to his second cousin's life other than raising kids and then passing away in a freak accident fire. So again, this song deals with the meaning of life and how we live and then we die and everything feels very meaningless, the whole thing. Afterwards, we have a song dedicated to his mother, and the song is called I Can't Live Without My Mother's Love. And also, a little later on the album, Mark also wrote another song called I Love My Dad. But back to this song, On this song, Mark also talks about her age, that is 75, while Carissa was 35, but that's just a little detail that I picked up. And this song is equally as beautiful in my opinion, but instead of being really dreary and depressing and despondent, it's rather warm, and it feels like the guitars are opening its arms and are trying to embrace us listeners and show us how beautiful motherly love is. And I mean, this song is pretty much that. And even though it's very simple in premise, it's still very beautiful and very gorgeous. Afterwards, we have the album Truck Driver, which is a song about how Mark's uncle passed away, which is in a fashion really similar to how Carissa passed away, in that he passed away in an accident fire. The scratchy guitars are really just sad and heartbreaking in the song. In a way, it feels like, you know how when you cry but you're trying to hold back the tears and then your throat starts to feel sore for some reason? That's how the guitars on this song sounds. And the vocal harmonies at the second half of the song is just very soft and tender and gentle, and the whole track is very sad, I guess, painful. Afterwards, we have the track Dogs, which is one of the more accessible tracks on the album in my opinion because of how rock tinged it is. It really has a guitar line that is really clear and a very constant drum beat on the track. The whole thing just feels like a really solid folk rock song. And the song is basically about Mark's every significant sexual experience. And the fact that this song is about Mark's sexual experiences all the way from when he was a kid until the time when he wrote the song just makes it more depressing for me, because it's very rare for me to hear someone talk about his or her list of sexual experiences and sexual partners in his or her life. And that will be my classmates soon. That will be the people I know soon who are around my age. Okay, I'm going off rails. Going back to the album, this song really feels depressing and also guilty, but not in a way Mark thinks he did something wrong kind of guilty. Actually not guilty, but more in a way this song feels like it's trying to show us that, you know, people having sex, that's just how life works. And I also really like the boomy drums at the end of the track. Anyway, afterwards we have the track Pray for Newtown, which is another really sad and heartbreaking song, but heartbreaking not only in a sad and painful way, but also in a way where it's kind of scary. And this song is essentially about mass shootings. I think about 4 or 5 incidents of mass shootings is being mentioned in the track here, and I think Mark's vocals on this track is especially teary. And again, I think mass shootings is a really serious problem in America, because there are no mass shootings in Hong Kong for like ever. And also same for a lot of the countries, but in the USA specifically, there are already over 200 mass shootings this year. And it's just really saddening and heartbreaking, really. The eerie harmonized guitars at the end of the track is also stunning, in my opinion. The next track is Jim Wise, with the slow lullaby electric keys. And it's about how a friend of Mark's dad, Jim Wise, on the track, Mercy killed his wife and then tried to kill himself but failed. And while instrumentally it's rather lighthearted and soft and tender, the topic being discussed here is still very heavy and very depressing, actually. And of course, afterwards, Mark has to talk about his dad with the track I Love My Dad. And rather than being this ode, this tribute to fatherly love, this song is more of a musical portrayal of his dad, where the song actually feels kind of fun and even has a bit of a country twang to it. And the guitars here actually feel very organic, like it's playing live somewhere. And I just really appreciate how Mark portrays his dad and talks about his dad on this track. The way Mark's dad told Mark to accept being with an albino. And then afterwards, we have an even more long winded track. That is, I watched the film The Song Remains the Same, which is a Led Zeppelin live concert film, apparently. And this is the longest song on the album, and it's over 10 minutes long. And instrumentally, it's not all that interesting or eventful, in my opinion. I kind of like the blossomy, warm guitars. That sort of forms a bed of fluttery guitars at the bottom of the track. It's pretty beautiful, but when it just goes on for 10 minutes, it's kind of long. The topics being discussed in the track is pretty good and pretty insightful, as always in Mark's music. Mark talks about, watching the movie and also punching a classmate in his schoolyard during elementary school and how that incident really made him feel sorry. But yeah, of course, the ending of the track, the layers of guitars, they're really beautiful. And then afterwards, it's the track Richard Ramirez Died Today of Natural Causes, and it is a highlight of the album. It's really one of my favorite tracks that Mark had ever put out, because the guitars here, they're not warm or tender or gentle at all. I mean, yes, they're tender and gentle, but they're not warm. In fact, it's very cold-blooded and very sinister and very anxiety-inducing, actually. The song is about the passing of Richard Ramirez, who's this serial killer. And Mark also talked about several other major deaths in the song, including James Gandolfini, who plays the main character in the TV show The Sopranos. But back to the song. We get these layered mumbles in the song, which just makes the song even more tense and anxiety-inducing. And when Mark sang about how, because of these deaths, these murders, kids are afraid of taps in the window, and kids are afraid of what's under their bed and what's under their pillow, it's pretty scary. Even though no way there are taps in my window, because I live on the 32nd floor in a tall building. And also, you know what's under my bed? Yeah, clothes. So I'm not really worried about what's under my bed. But still, I really appreciate the lyricism on the track. And then we have the penultimate track, Micheline, where Mark talks about 3 different people in his life. First one being Micheline, who was in love with Mark, but who's also mentally disabled. And again, a very beautiful and humane portrayal of her is in the first third of the track. The second part of the track is where Mark talks about Brett, a friend of his, who passed away because of brain aneurysm. And it's pretty saddening as well. And then at the last third of the track, Mark talks about how his grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. And while instrumentally the song is really sweet and it feels like a very nostalgic memoir of some sorts, the lyrics here, they still continue to ponder about the meaning of life and mortality itself. And the last track, Ben's My Friend, is a very pleasant ending to the album, because it sounds like the end credits. It isn't the finale. I think the finale is Micheline, and Ben's My Friend is basically the end credits, where we sort of return from all the thoughts and experiences revolving around mortality and death. We go back to normal life, and we realize that we have to move on, and this is what the instrumentals exactly feel like. It's sort of rock tinged, but even more jazz tinged. It's very relaxing. very comforting, and it sounds like life has to go on, even though a lot of people around you are passing away and are having a lot of difficulties and unfortunate events. Life still goes on. You still need to move on with life. And the instrumentals are just amazing. I really like the descending guitar chords, and the saxophone solo is stellar on the track as well. And also, this song, lyrically, it's pretty simplistic, where Mark talks about, spending time with his friend, with his significant other, ordering blue crab cakes in a cafe, looking at some sports bar shit. And it feels like a very final song, but not in that it feels final, if you know what I mean. It's not an ultimate finale, but instead a really warm and comforting conclusion of all these traumatic, but at the end of the day, realistic events. And I like this song so much, I even made it the last song in my series of videos documenting my trip in Europe. P.S. I used the Beatles' A Day in the Life as the last song for my series of videos on my trip to USA, but still, Ben's My Friend is a perfect song for the end credits, and it's just an absolutely beautiful and gorgeous way to end off the album. And overall, again, yeah, this album is not very versatile or flowery or decorated. It's not very packed or condensed. It's very much simplistic. I still really love the album for how beautiful, how gorgeous, how bare bones and honest and sincere it is. And also, the way Mark's lyrics talk about mortality and the meaning of life, it's very much realistic and also kind of bittersweet at the same time. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. My favorite track on the album is probably Carissa, and my least favorite is I watched the film The Song Remains the Same, and I am giving Sun Kill Moon's Benji a 9 out of 10. A decent 9. So, have you listened to Benji? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching. Also, I will be reviewing Charlie XCX afterwards, because after Benji, it's Charlie.